Hi, my name is Vicki Dawson and I'm the Country Manager for Australia and New Zealand. Happy Australia Day. I hope you've all had fun today celebrating everything that's great about this nation. And to those of you joining us outside of Australia, welcome. Today I'm going to guide you on how to find your ancestors in Australia. We'll look at what records are available for researching your ancestors down under, and I'll take you through the wonderful vast collection of records available on Findmypast, including the newly released Victoria Petty Sessions registers. Findmypast currently has over 100 million Australian records. Now these cover a variety of genres including births, deaths, marriages, prison records, wills and probate, passenger lists and migration, through to directories and social history, as well as military records and much, much more. As a starter, let's look at what is available in our life events records. Now these records include baptisms, births, deaths, marriages, divorces, cemetery records, and wills and probate. When looking for births, deaths, or marriages, it's important to note that Australia does not have a national register, and civil registration is recorded by each state individually, so regulations around what years are available historically vary from state to state. However, first I'll show you what indexes are available on Findmypast, then I'll show you a guide on the various state registries and how to obtain official certificates. Findmypast has birth, death and marriage indexes for all Australian states as follows. New South Wales, births from 1788 through to 1914, deaths from 1788 through to 1945, and marriages from 1788 through to 1945. Victoria, births from 1836 through to 1916, deaths from 1836 through to 1985, and marriages from 1836 through to 1942. Queensland, births from 1829 through to 1919, deaths from 1829 through to 1964, and marriages from 1829 through to 1939. South Australia, births from 1842 through to 1928, deaths from 1842 through to 1972, and marriages from 1842 through to 1937. Now, Findmypast are the only commercial website to have the official South Australian Birth, Death and Marriage Index available. Western Australia, births from 1841 through to 1905, deaths from 1841 through to 1980, and marriages from 1841 through to 1965. Tasmania, births from 1803 through to 1933, deaths from 1803 through to 1933, and marriages from 1803 through to 1899. Northern Territory, births from 1870 through to 1918, deaths from 1870 through to 1913, and marriages from 1870 through to 1913. Australian Capital Territory, deaths from 1930 through to 1983, and marriages from 1930 through to 1983. Now let's look at what information is typically available on an index and how you use this information to order an historical certificate. For this, I'm going to look up the marriage of one of my ancestors, Tamina Stewart. Now, this is a photo of a pregnant Tamina with her husband, Robert Barron. Unfortunately, the date is unknown, however it is very significant to our family. This photo was actually found in a secret compartment of the family writing chest, which had been handed down to my grandfather by his father and had been in my grandfather's possession for over 50 years, and that entire time he had no idea the photo of his grandmother was there. Tamina married my great-great-grandfather Robert Barron in 1874 in Victoria. Because I know I'm looking for a marriage in Victoria, I'll search the specific record set via the A to Z of record sets, which can be found in the search drop-down menu. This is generally my preferred way to search Findmypast, as each search screen is unique to the record set, which is really useful if you have additional information and to narrow down your search results. If you know the name of the record set you want to search, just start typing the name of the record set and all results that match will be displayed. In this case, I'm going to search Victorian marriages 1836 to 1942. And you'll see this specific search screen only has two search fields, name and year. I know what year Tamina married Robert, so my search result is exact. So what information can generally be found on a marriage transcription? You'll get the name of the person and their spouse, the gender, year of marriage, where they were married, and the registration number. This information can now be used to order a certificate from the relevant registry offices in each state. This example of Tamina's marriage certificate in Victoria shows what information can generally be found on certificates at the time. You'll see additional information such as their occupation, age, current residence, parents' name, as well as the exact place they got married and witnesses. Plus, you'll be able to view their signature. Findmypast includes the information on where to go to order historical certificates under Learn More on each search screen. Certificate costs do vary from state to state, as well as the historical records available, and are as follows. New South Wales is $45 discounted to $32 if you apply online, for births over 100 years ago, deaths over 30 years, and marriages over 50 years. Victoria is $24.60 for an historical image, which is a scanned image of the original registration record and cannot be used for official purposes, or $31.80 for the historical certificate, which is a certified copy of the original registration record and can be used for official purposes. That's births from 1853 to 1915, marriages from 1853 to 1942, deaths from 1853 to 1988, and church baptisms, marriages and burials from 1836 to 1853. Queensland is $20.70 for a historical image and $29 for a historical certificate, for births over 100 years ago, deaths over 30 years, and marriages over 75 years. South Australia is $47.75 for births over 100 years ago, deaths over 30 years, and marriages over 75 years. Western Australia is $20 for an historical image or $48 for an historical certificate, which can be reduced to $35 if the event is over 75 years ago, for births over 100 years, deaths over 30 years, and marriages over 75 years. Tasmania is $47.43 for births over 100 years, deaths over 25 years, and marriages over 75 years. Northern Territory is $44 for births over 80 years ago, deaths over 30 years ago, and marriages over 60 years. Australian Capital Territory is $45 for births over 100 years, deaths over 30 years, and marriages over 75 years. Unfortunately, Tamina died during the birth of her fourth child on January 29, 1882, aged 36. Findmypast has a vast collection of Australian wills and probate records. Now, this is currently for New South Wales, Tasmania and Queensland, with Victoria coming soon, which will result in us having the largest collection of Australian wills and probate records available online. For New South Wales, we have over 400,000 will books covering 1800 through to 1952, with most dating from 1846. Now, these will books are transcribed copies of original will books held by the State Records Authority of New South Wales. Between 1800 and 1924, the copies of the wills were handwritten, whereas between 1924 and 1952, the copies were typed. In 1952, the copies were altered to photocopies. The New South Wales will books include some wills of those who were living in other states or countries. People who lived elsewhere may have lodged their will in New South Wales despite not living there, particularly if they had property, shares or interest in the state. So if you had ancestors living outside of New South Wales, don't disregard these records as they may just be included in this record collection. These records are transcribed and include the original images. From these records, you'll be able to determine where they were residing, their occupation, named beneficiaries, the details of their estate, the date of death. Even if your ancestor didn't leave a will, they may still be included as dying intestate, as was the case with Mel Gibson's famous paternal grandmother, Eva Gibson. Now, Eva was a well-known opera singer and protege of Dame Nellie Melba. Eva died on the 20th of March 1920, aged 44, after slipping in the shower and injuring her neck. Eva was a resident of Chicago, Illinois in the US, and she's a perfect example of someone you may find in this record collection who was not living within the country. Search option for New South Wales will books includes the ability to search on heirs or executors' last names. These were only transcribed for a portion of the records, however you may be able to find your ancestors in these records if they were noted in someone else's will. To give you an idea on what you may discover in this collection, we'll search for well-known Australian Sir Charles Kingsford Smith. It's better to always start by ticking the name variant box, particularly for names where they may be hyphenated, and also in this case, Charles was transcribed as Sir Charles Edward. From the transcription, we can see the full name as transcribed, the date of death, their occupation and residence. If they had heirs or executors transcribed, you'll also see those names listed. Now, when we view Charles's will, we can see that on the 17th of September 1931, Charles appointed his wife Mary as sole executor and trustee, as well as bequeathed his entire estate to her, just 4 years before he disappeared over the sea on his attempt to break the England to Australia speed record. What we can discover from his will is that on the 25th of May 1936, probate was granted to his wife Mary 6 months after his disappearance, however only on the presumption of his death, and that the estate, which was valued at just shy of £13,000, was not to be distributed until further court orders allowed. You may also come across some colourful details about the lives of your ancestors and their honest thoughts on their family, such as the case of naturalist and entomologist Alexander Macleay, who excluded his eldest son William from his will by noting, in consequence of the rapacious, ungrateful, unnatural and cruel conduct he displayed towards his family. Or there's the case of Thomas Johnson from Sydney, who was very keen to ensure that his treasured supply of alcohol found a suitable home after his death. Now, you won't find this record collection anywhere else. It is only available on Findmypast. Other wills and probate records include the Tasmania Wills and Letters of Administration records dated from 1824 through to 1989, with over 106,000 records, including images of the original wills. And for Queensland, we have transcriptions of Queensland intestacies and wills covering 1859 through to 1900, and the Queensland Wills Index covering 1857 through to 1940. And as mentioned earlier, we will also have thousands of Victorian wills coming soon. For those of you that don't know, Australia destroys censuses after the statistical information has been collected, and the 1828 New South Wales census is the only complete 19th century census to have survived. These records are the original householder's returns, which is the form filled in and signed by the householder on census night, rather than the more usual enumerator's books. The 1828 New South Wales census was the first Australian census and was taken in November of that year. Previous government statistics were based on musters, which is a head count of assembled convicts and settlers. In 1828, the white population of the whole of Australia was just 36,598, made up of 20,870 being free settlers and 15,728 being convicts, with 638 of that total white population living in what is now Queensland and just over 18,100 in Tasmania. Findmypast has these householders' returns for the 1828 New South Wales census, as well as the collector's books from the New South Wales censuses for 1841, 1891 and 1901. All of these are transcribed and include the original image from State Records Authority of New South Wales. Additionally, we have the South Australia Census Index for 1841. From these records, you can find out your ancestors' professions, the name of the ship they arrived on, other family members who were living with them, and whether they arrived as settlers or convicts. So we're going to look at what alternate records are available for placing your ancestor in a particular place in time in lieu of available census records. Electoral rolls are an excellent substitute for locating your ancestors in Australia. Now, here at Findmypast, we're always looking at ways in which we can improve how we serve our records and improve the search experience for our members. With that, I'm excited to announce that we have recently republished our Australian Electoral Roll collection. This is now fully transcribed with additional search features, making it easier for you to locate your ancestors. Now, this is a multi-phase project, and the first phase has over 12.6 million records included, covering 1860 through to 1959. with an estimated 100 million more records going up to 1989 to follow in the coming months. Now, these are transcribed from OCR documents, so they are not 100% accurate. However, you can use the error reporting tool to report any transcription errors, and we encourage you to do so. So for this example, again, we'll use the A to Z of record sets to search Australia electoral rolls. The new and improved search is now more closely similar to a UK Census search and includes additional fields to search on, such as other household members, place and street address. You can even search on an occupation. Alternatively, you also have the option to search on an address only. We'll use the person search first. In this example, I've used Robert Barron, and as you can see on the new and improved transcription view, you can now see other potential household members, as well as their gender, birth year where recorded, occupation, the year, electoral roll number, house name, street address, place, sub-district, district and state. You can also click across to view the image of the electoral roll for some selective records. Alternatively, you can now search only using the address. And in this example, I've entered Robert's address of Morgan Street in the street field and Ravensthorpe in the place name field. As you can see, the new and improved electoral roll search makes it much easier to locate your Australian ancestors. Now for some more fantastic news. We have recently published a brand new collection of Victoria Petty Sessions registers. Now, these have never before been digitised or transcribed. Brought to you for the first time in partnership with Public Records Office Victoria and Family Search. The initial launch consists of over 3 million records covering 1851 through to 1937, with millions of more records to be added over the next 2 years. These records are fascinating as they put meat on the bones of your ancestors. They consist of petty crimes as recorded in the courts throughout Victoria and include plaintiffs and defendants. However, you may also find additional information such as applications for licences. These records are a treasure trove of information. The Court of Petty Sessions was created to hear minor offences and committal proceedings and was usually brought before a magistrate without a jury. Dating back to colonial days, the Court of Petty Sessions first convened in 1838 in Melbourne. Such courts were additionally spread across Victoria, and by 1880 there were 235 locations, and complaints regarding money were originally limited to sums not exceeding £20. These records do include the average person. For example, you could be fined for keeping your children home from school, which was common amongst the farming community during harvest time. You could also be fined for not vaccinating your children, owning an unregistered dog, or even opening your shop and trading on a Sunday. Then there are more common petty crimes, such as not indicating on your horse and cart or motor vehicle in later dates. So as you can see, these records may just uncover your ancestors' minor misdemeanours. The initial launch of these records includes 74 courts throughout Victoria and may include the person's name, date of the event, their role, the cause or reason, the court it was heard at, a description, the session's date, and the archival reference. Additionally, the image may provide further details, such as how an individual was brought before the court, for example, arrest on view, warrant or summons, any fees applicable, the court's decision, a memo of conviction or order, any remarks. The details found in these records may hint at further insight into your ancestor regarding rank, status, property ownership, or even occupation. You can also search on a particular court, and this image gives you an example of what the average Petty Sessions register looks like. You can see a Robert Hughes was brought before the courts because he left a dead bullock in his paddocks on the bank of a river, polluting the water to the discomfort of his neighbours. Or Mary Crowell, who was fined for keeping her shop open for trade on a Sunday. However, it seems she didn't learn her lesson as she was fined another 14 times over a 20-year period. Now, these are just a few examples of what you can find in this fascinating collection. Other related records include the Victoria Prison Registers and the New South Wales Jail Photographic Description Books. These are for much more serious crimes. However, they do detail the prisoner's physical distinguishing features or marks, personal descriptions such as eye colour and height, and mugshots or portrait of the prisoner. The Victorian prison registers include records for male and female prisoners and covers the years 1855 through to 1960, whereas the New South Wales Jail Photographic description books cover the years 1871 through to 1969. Findmypast has millions of crime and convict records for Australia, including many records for convicts, or as we like to refer to them as Australian royalty. Many of our convict records include the transcription and the original image. Moving away from our criminal ancestors, you may be asking, how did my ancestors get to Australia, or did they move around the country at all? This is where we can use passenger lists to gauge their movement, and Findmypast has over 42 million records relating to travel and migration within or to or from Australia. Now, there are too many to go into, so I'll just highlight two of our most recent additions to the site, and these are the Victoria Coastal Passenger List and the New South Wales Passenger List. The Victoria Coastal Passenger List covers the years 1852 to 1924. These include transcriptions and the original Coastal Passenger List. Consisting of over 3.2 million records, this collection includes both those travelling from overseas and those travelling locally from coast to coast. What makes this collection so significant is that it covers the mass migration into Victoria during the gold rush. Now, this saw the population of the state explode. Additionally, you may be able to uncover their occupation, marital status, and the image may also provide further details on any other family members they may have been travelling with. If you're looking for ancestors travelling around Australia, this may be where you find them. The New South Wales Passenger List has 8.6 million records, covering 1826 through to 1900, and includes both assisted and non-assisted passengers. Now, assisted passengers refers to those who received monetary assistance from another party or agency for their passage. There were several assisted immigration schemes set up for this purpose in the hopes of encouraging migration and settlement in Australia. The assisted passenger lists cover the years 1828 to 1896, and unassisted passengers are those whose passage was not subsidised or paid for by a third party or agency, and these cover the years 1826 to 1900. These records will reveal, amongst other things, your ancestors' age, birth year, nationality or where born, whether a seaman or passenger, their station or job, as well as departure and arrival ports, and of course, the date of the journey. Let's take a look at an example of an assisted passenger list from this collection. Now, this particular example shows John Black was 8 years old and was travelling with his father Michael, who was a 31-year-old shepherd, his mother Mary, who was a 24-year-old dairymaid, and his 6-year-old sister, another Mary. We also discover they are Roman Catholics, and whilst his father can read and write, the rest of the family cannot. Now, it's this type of additional information which truly gives you an insight into your ancestors' lives. And this example of a transcription from an unassisted passenger list reveals Michael Brown was a seaman who departed London for Sydney in 1864, with his station being a fireman. He was 42 years old, born in 1822. Other useful resources available on Findmypast include government gazettes and police gazettes. Government gazettes were published by the government as a means of communication to officials as well as the general public. They were usually issued weekly with occasional special issues and may include information such as proclamations, land transactions, court notices, notice of acts, public notices, probates and bankruptcies, tenders, appointments and resignations, bankrupt and insolvency notices, impoundments, police auctions, unclaimed letters, licenses such as publicans or storekeepers, as well as any rewards on offer, and much, much more. You may also come across various lists. For example, in the 1833 New South Wales Gazette, there is a list of prisoners of the Crown who were given tickets of leave. The government gazettes are a really useful resource to assist in your Australian research, and Findmypast currently has government gazettes for New South Wales covering 1832 to 1880, with 1832 through to 1863 transcribed, Queensland from 1859 through to 1905, South Australia covering 1841 to 1870, Tasmania from 1907 through to 1919, and Victoria from 1851 through to 1901, with Port Phillip, Victoria for 1847. Police gazettes were also usually published weekly and were distributed to the police force only throughout the whole state. Therefore, these gazettes contain details and information that cannot be found anywhere else. The information contained in the police gazettes varies a little from year to year, however generally include court lists, lists of warrants issued, appointments and changes within the police force, lists of justices of the peace, arrests and discharges, which usually include descriptions, escaped prisoners, missing persons, as well as lists for liquor sales, tobacco sellers and auctioneers. They also provide information on crimes such as house break-ins, robberies, arson, murders, court records, lost horses and cattle, deserters, escaped prisoners, and reports on those released. Notices from the police gazettes from other states are also often included. For a wanted or missing person, you will usually find a description, often detailed information not available in other records, such as aliases used, age, height, hair and eye colour, and any distinguishing features, even details on the clothing worn. This article shows you an example of what you may find in a police gazette. A missing persons notice was published on the 12th of November 1875 for George Thomas Buckie and reads as follows. Information is requested as to the present whereabouts of George Thomas Buckie, formerly a trooper in the 13th Light Dragoon Guards, who sailed from India to this colony in a vessel called the Currency Lass, and was subsequently employed on Canning Downs by a gentleman named Leslie. The last letter received from him by his friends in Dublin was dated from Emma Creek, information to the officer in charge of detectives, Brisbane. And a further notice published on the 15th of December 1875 from another police gazette advising he was found dead. George Thomas Buckie, or Breaky, has been ascertained to have been found dead on Glengallum Plain in the Warwick district on the 21st of August 1857, where he was well known to the police as living on Gumbara Station, then the property of Patrick Leslie, Esquire. The police gazettes available on Findmypast include New South Wales, covering 1862 through to 1900, Queensland from 1864 through to 1900, with 1864 through to 1874 transcribed, South Australia from 1862 through to 1900, Tasmania from 1884 to 1900, and Victoria from 1855 through to 1900. The majority of the government gazettes and police gazettes are PDF documents which can be browsed. Now, the search screen for PDF documents differs slightly to records that have been transcribed. PDF documents are what we refer to as non-conforming data. These documents have been through a process of optical character recognition, commonly referred to as OCR. This means when you're searching for a particular name within the document, it can't determine what fields are and what is a first name or last name, etc. So the search screen is an open field which can be used to enter the person's name or address or other relevant search terms. However, be aware that if you enter a person's first name and last name, for example as John Smith, it may return results for a John Black living on Smith Street if the fields are close enough to each other within the document. Now, this is typical of what the PDF records look like. It's just like reading a book online, and you can use the next and previous buttons to browse through the document. Findmypast also has a large number of niche records for smaller communities, which in many cases have been compiled by family history societies or dedicated family historians. In many of these cases, the process has taken many years and lots of hard work. However, this has resulted in some fascinating record collections. And again, there are too many to highlight. However, I will show you a few that are available. It's important in family history research to look at a number of different resources, and I strongly recommend you search these smaller, significant record collections. If you have ancestors from the Coffs Harbour district in New South Wales, you may be able to locate them in the Coffs Harbour District Schools Index. These records were compiled from school admission registers and contain over 14,000 records for 14 schools in the Coffs Harbour region between 1912 and 1984. Now, these include information such as their full name, the date of admission, the name of the school, date of leaving school, and the registration number, which can then be used to locate the entry in the source document, which is held by the Coffs Harbour District Family History Society. Or maybe you had ancestors that were ill at some stage which required hospitalisation in Queensland. The Brisbane Hospital Patient Index, which covers the years 1887 through to 1902, was compiled from 4 different sources held at Queensland State Archives and includes biographical data for more than 2,000 men, women and children. Some of the patients lived in other parts of Queensland, including the far north and west of the state, so don't disregard this data set if they didn't live around Brisbane. These records include the patient's full name, the number in the register, and some may also include notes to assist in identification if part of the name was missing or to aid in suspected spelling variants, aliases or birth names. Findmypast also has a number of records for regional cemeteries around Australia, and some of those include Dubbo in New South Wales Old Cemetery Headstone Index covering 1863 through to 1994. This cemetery opened in 1863, however the cemetery was closed in 1967. These records have been compiled by Dubbo and District Family History Society. Or Newcastle in New South Wales Lost Cemeteries Index, which covers 1842 through to 1902. Newcastle in New South Wales has a long history of burial grounds from the 19th century that have since been converted into open parks or building sites. Now, these records were compiled by Newcastle Family History Society and include 5 cemeteries and over 7,000 records. The information you can uncover from records such as these include the age at death, the date of death, age at birth, and parents' names, just to name a few. Now, this gives you an idea of the types of niche records available at Findmypast. Now, there are a number of ways to only search the Australian collection on Findmypast. One is from the homepage. Select Australia and New Zealand from the Where drop-down option. 2 is from the Search drop-down menu at the top of the page, then selecting Australia and New Zealand from the menu on the left-hand side. Or 3, from the A to Z of record sets, and again selecting Australia and New Zealand, which will enable you to only browse the record sets for Australia and New Zealand. Make sure you're subscribed to the Findmypast Friday emails as we continue our promise to deliver more new records to you every week. And look out for many more new and exclusive Australian records coming soon. I trust you've enjoyed this webinar, and if you have any questions at all, please send them through. Thank you.